Welcome back to SOT Streams. And tonight we're going to go live on the importance of why. Now, let me start by saying hi there to all of you in the chat. Hi there John, hi there Real Raven, hi there Anxious, and hi there Michael Keller. I hope this is going to be an interesting stream. Why is one of my more favorite topics, I guess. Next Saturday might work out for the Rune stream. Well, yeah, let's put it on Saturday then, because it gives me something to do for a Saturday stream. That's nice. Okay, so now you heard it all. Saturday will be the Rune stream. But for today, we're going to talk about the importance of why. There is a reason why I'm going to start on why. Now, I may have mentioned it once or twice before in the past, but we live in a society where people have forgotten about why. And why in itself is now considered a challenge, to some even an insult. How dare you ask me? But it should not be anything other than asking for clarification. Oh, not this Saturday, next Saturday. All right. Then I still have to figure out something for this Saturday, but I'll put it up for next week. Back to why. Now, a lot of people seem to misunderstand the very concept of why. There are several reasons for it. One of them is that people seem to think that you could ask more whys than can be answered. I can't remember the original saying. It was something like, a fool can ask why more often than a wise man can answer. And there is a reason why people say that. Because asking questions is always a good thing, and as long as people think they can answer it, they don't mind you asking the questions. A lot of people start having a problem when you ask questions they cannot answer. Funny enough, this is one of the reasons why it is important to ask questions. Not to prove that some people can't answer them, but to make you realize that you have to think about certain things. After all, there is nothing wrong with not knowing an answer. But there is something wrong with pretending that you do. There is a lot to say about why, but I'm going to start with the definition, and I'm going to just use a random internet website dictionary thing, because let's be honest, it doesn't really matter much. Let me know, guys, if you can read this well, and if you can, then I'll continue. If not, let me know, because then I can always make it bigger. But yeah, so here is a dictionary. And which dictionary is this? This is the free dictionary. Do I care which one I use? No, not really. Now, why? Why as a question is a very important one. Enlarge the text size. I can do that. Is this better, Michael? Or do you need it bigger still? I'll wait. I'll give it a sec. Not a change yet. Yeah, it's not the fastest. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's... When we used to do old Hangouts, we didn't have that much of a delay, but now we really do have a large delay. I'm sorry about that one. Not much I can do on that one. It's still an eye chart. What do you mean an eye chart, Nick? And hi there, mate. Do you need it bigger? No, I made it bigger already. Do you need it bigger still then? Okay. Hoppa, there you go. So, is it better now? Ah, right, as in I test. Well, okay. And Control plus plus. How old-fashioned are you, Real Raven? I have a scroll mouse. And Control scroll mouse will do the trick too, boomer. Okay. Anyway, so why? For what purpose, reason or cause? With what intention, justification or motive? This is a very interesting question, because why is so broad a question. It can go into anything that preceded it and everything that will come after it. The main reason why people ask why, especially in an early age, is it helps them form identity. It helps them form self. So what does that mean? Well, kids go through several phases before they reach adulthood. And each of those phases is accompanied with a Y phase. Now, we don't call them Y phases, or we should. And these Y phases are based on who they are and where they are in their development. Is this something that only happens to children? Well, no. Adults go through Y phases too, but funny enough, adults are rarely aware of themselves going through a Y phase. And that's because during the period of childhood, a lot of children learn not to ask too many questions because they're being called nosy or eigenwijs, but I don't know the English word for eigenwijs at the moment. Cheeky, I guess. And with those comments, we basically teach our children not to ask why. I mean, for those of you out there who have kids, I'm pretty sure that there has been at least once in your life that your kids ask and ask and ask, and then you answer because I say so. Now, you may have done that only once or twice in your life, don't worry. But there are lots of people who do this continuously. And indeed, Anxious Aussie, if you stop asking why, you're basically giving up on living. Though being complacent is something that a lot of people do. Oh, alright, I'll maximize the browser. So, better? Well, John, you're right. A kid asking why, when it becomes repetitive and seemingly for the sake of it, can become very annoying too. The difficult thing is, though, is a kid asking it to be annoying, or is it genuinely asking why? Or is it a way for a kid to come into contact with you? All three are possible. There are even more reasons why a kid keeps asking why. But the way you deal with it says something about you. And a kid looks about all sorts of answers. And the first person it looks towards are their parents. And indeed, Anxious Aussie, climate nuts are like parents when it comes to the whole climate change debate. Well, why is CO2 a problem? Because I say so. Yeah, but that's not an answer. So for what purpose is climate change a problem? Well, people can die. Yes, people keep dying all over the place. But what does that have to do with climate change? Well, it might get warmer. Okay, so why would people die when it gets warmer? LOL is very good. I'm not quite sure I will get you there, Real Raven. And hi there, Innovatio. The problem with the way we raise our children, and especially in the Western world at the moment, a lot of people stop asking why. And there are people who are being, how do you call it, ostracized because they ask why too often. Or indeed, they won't accept the answer when they ask why and someone says, because we say so. As if that's a good reason. There is no good reason. Listen, if your children ask you questions and you don't know the answer, what's the reason to say, stop asking me the question? Why can't you say, I'm sorry, I don't know. Let's look into it together. This is a deep topic, and I'm trying to narrow it down a little bit. So let's get back to the early ages of life, when kids are in their first development stage. And we've all been there, so it's nothing new under the sun. But we had a lot of whys. Everything was unclear to us. The unclarity we are trying to fill with answers. Humans are nothing if not seekers of patterns. And kids do this by asking their parents. And they keep doing that till roughly their first teenage years, when they go to teenage puberty, where they stop asking why only of their parents, but also from people around them. And this new why phase is very important, not so much because it sets them off against their parents. Let's be honest, not all teenagers during their puberty are against their parents. But what it does do is it creates a bigger audience. No, not so much audience. A bigger bowl to pick from. Because they stop asking only why from their direct parents, but they start asking why to everyone. They start asking why to each other. This is when groups and cliques start forming on something other than I like you or I don't like you. Because most kids don't know why they like other kids of a certain age other than, okay, we can play together. But after, well, I think from a year or 8, more motivations come into I like someone or I don't like someone. And after teenage puberty, it becomes very tangible. Kids can actually explain what they like and what they don't like about someone. Not perfectly, but they can. There are reasons why they have motivations. They are starting to think in why, not as just an answer, but also as an explanation of their self and their own behavior. This all helps children to shape into adults. So, does that then mean that during adulthood, why has become of any less importance? No, it doesn't. Because whenever you move into a new group of people, you are going to have a lot of why questions. Because you want to find out the hierarchy in the group, the way the group handles certain things. This is especially true when you go to a new job. All these whys will mold together into a new view of you and of the environment you're living in. Hi there, Richard Byers. Okay, let me see what John just said. It's likely to be biological. It is also likely to be we are programmed to learn like sponges when young. Puberty becomes the entry to adulthood. So learning diminishes in the brain. That's not really true, John. Because during puberty, learning doesn't become less. It changes its... Not so much its direction. It changes where it gets the information from. The young children look to their parents. And that goes on till easily 7 years old. Then it starts looking, and not just parents, but the adults close by it. They will make contact with anyone, but they'll ask direct questions only to the ones they trust. Now, the older they get, they're going to ask questions broader. And our ability to learn reduces with age is, well, yes, it's a fact, but trust me, puberty is not a moment that it has reduced. We should easily be able to keep learning till 25, 30. After that, it's going to take some more effort, but yeah. But the reason why people seem to think that teenagers are less likely to learn is because they stop asking questions. Well, primarily asking questions to their direct parents. They start asking questions to other kids. And the why becomes more structured is not really a bad way of looking at it, to be honest. The why itself doesn't become more structured, but they have more structure in the why, which almost sounds the same, but there is a difference. The structure comes from the person themselves, the way they understand the why. The way we learn change with age. We still learn, but in different ways. You're examining a symptom, but not a cause. You're correct in a way. Yes, we keep learning, but the way we learn changes. But we still learn from why. But an adult can look at why do I need to learn this in a way different way than a kid or a teenager or even an early 20er. They look at tasks and social cohesion and interaction with other people as something that is automatic, and therefore they will continue in it. The older you get, the more you start to understand that, wait a second, there is more to it. I need to do something. I need to get something out of it. And yes, in a training, most adults learn what and not why, and that's the problem, to be honest. And this is one of the reasons why we see in a society that we are in now that why is often not appreciated. It seems that education nowadays is more interested in learning new facts than learning you how to think. Why is based on understanding and expanding on that knowledge, where what is merely based on this is how, do as I tell you. This is why is such an important question. Now don't get me wrong, all of the 5 W's are important, but why is the most important because it talks about development, understanding, and the way to stand up for others and yourself. And indeed, kids need to experience to gain the reasoning to explain why, but this is not this is not untrue for adults. Imagine that you're going to go for a new job, and in that new job, people do something in a certain way. The why that they do it like that is important. Now, when a young person goes from one job to another job, and he has a more or less similar experience, he is, funnily enough, more likely to do what the old job did, and then when other people tell him not to, he'll need to change. Whereas older people are faster to accept, okay, but that's not how we do it here. And that's not how we do it here is very difficult to accept. So the first thing people ask then, oh, why? If that why can't be answered, people will have a problem with it. I'm all over the place. I should have created a better template for myself to start with, because, yeah. If we look at the early ages of a kid, and I'm easily talking till the teenage puberty, but the first puberty people nowadays talk about is toddler's puberty, or up to 4-year-old puberty. I forgot the English word for it. You see that these kids ask why a lot. But they don't only ask why a lot, they try out. They jump off of things that might hurt them because, can I do this? And if I can, should I do this? But instead of asking it, they're trying things out. Children like more likely to are active, and because of that jump into things. Now the older they get, the more they start understanding language, so the more they're going to ask, oh, why? Why is that man blah blah blah? Why is that woman blah blah blah? Often parents find these questions difficult. Not always, but often. But kids ask these questions not to become difficult or to be offensive. They ask these questions to learn to make sense of the world around them. During the, how do you call this? Teenage puberty, teenage puberty, they stop listening to adults a bit because they start trying to figure out the world for themselves. But they can't do it themselves, so they talk with other kids. They listen more to other kids as well, which is funny to see, but it's also difficult. This is one of the tasks that the school teachers have to deal with, because, yeah, okay, you've got a lot of kids you want to teach, but I'm sorry, Anxious, what do you mean with hello, Mrs. Mott? Anyway, so school teachers will need to find a way to reach these children and try to get them to think about certain things. Now, I fear that in our... Oh yeah, well, she's yes, she's sitting next to me, but I need to focus. I'm sorry. In schools, a lot of kids know that they need to learn, but they don't always want to go to school. But if a teacher can make it interesting, then yeah, sure, they will go. No, it's not your fault, Anxious. I'm all over the place. I noticed myself. I'm probably a bit tired, that's why. If we then look at, for example, what they're saying here. Okay, so people can say, I know why you did certain things. That's an explanatory claim. Or why is this door shut? This is asking. The main difference is that teenagers at a certain point are more from working from the conjuncture. I understand why you do this. Often they might not, but they still claim they do, because in their world they do. Doesn't mean that they don't want to listen, doesn't mean they don't want to give you a chance, but in their worldview they understand where you're coming from. They might be wrong, and that's when you have to explain them. And this is where we are stuck in our society now. What do I mean? Well, we have a lot of people that understand your why, even though your why might be something completely different than what they think they understand. And this is the important thing. This is why it's so important that people should always be able to ask why. We are currently in a society, we are currently in the Western world, in a culture where asking why is considered bad. Kids are being taught not to ask why too often because it becomes annoying, but with that these kids become adults, and as adults they have been told not to ask why too often, or rather they've been told this as kids, but this is one of the things they take with them when they are older. So now when people ask why, you don't get a reasoned argument, you get because I feel that this is the case. Hi there, William. And yes, asking why is considered bad under authoritarianism. This is true. Hi there, Paulo. But it's not just authoritarianism that is bad. But once you get into a situation where people feel I'm better than you, therefore you should listen to what I say, which is in all fairness also authoritarianism, this is a problem. So now you get jobs and people tell you, we want you to do X. Why do you want me to do X? Well, because we always do X. Okay, why do we always do X? Stop asking questions. This is a problem. But within our society, we have completely accepted this the norm. This is why Antifa can go out on the street and block traffic because they want to stop fascists. But you are the fascist now. No, we're not. Why not? Because we say so. Okay, so what is fascism? You are fascism. There is no answer to why, because they don't even ask why. It is customary, you bigot. Yeah, there you go. I do love the word why too. It's the most important word. It's a very communicative, but a very the word shapes. Let me put it like that. Why gives shape. Now, it's very important that we let our children ask why, but maybe it's more important that we are open to answer why. Now that sounds simple enough, but and I think you have a good point there too. It's religious. The less why you ask, the less doubt there is. And the we I'm talking about, John, is society at large. Now, there is no individual we. There is no group we, but there is a culture of we. The culture of people that say, yeah, but you shouldn't say that word because it's offensive to people. Okay, to whom is it offensive? Yeah, to them. Okay, did they tell you that? Or did you tell them that? You don't know. It's for example, all over the place tonight, I know. But look, in the Netherlands we have this issue with Zwarte Piet. Zwarte Piet is the helper of Saint Nicholas. Saint Nicholas is the original version of Santa Claus. And he gives gifts. And one of his helpers, or rather, nowadays all of his helpers, are black people. It's slavery. Why is it slavery? Well, because they're black. And he's white. Okay, but do you know the original story of Zwarte Piet and Saint Nicholas? Yes, I don't know it, but it's slavery because I say so, because he's white, they're black. Okay, but the story tells how Zwarte Piet used to be a slave. He was freed by Saint Nick, and because he was freed, Zwarte Piet chose to stay with Sinterklaas. Not as his slave, but as his helper. See, he's a slave. I'm sorry, but who's the racist now? Because if your argument is he's a slave because Saint Nick is white, does that then not automatically mean that you consider black people slaves when they work for a white person? Yeah, but that's not a right question. Why isn't it a right question? Because you're a bigot. And there goes the why. People don't like why. Why? Because why challenges. And it challenges beliefs, structures, ideas. And it's very difficult for people to have their ideas, their structures, and at some points even their identity challenged. It's very difficult for people to say, well, I feel like this and this and this and this. Okay, why? What do you mean why? There is no why, there's only I do. I remember when I started studying the Soviets and I heard they taught their kids the basics of law from the age of 7. I thought, great. Then I discovered it wasn't for them to question, but just to obey. It was part of my awakening as to why I should appreciate being born in the West and how lucky I was to have a chance to question my world. And there you go, Renovatio. Very good of you to say this. Because indeed, they teach children, they indoctrinate children early. Because that's the best time to get indoctrination stuck. And it's very difficult for people to break their indoctrination. And not to say look at me or look at other people, but only so many people have been able to break their indoctrination. And I hope I did, even though I might still fall back into it. I mean, I can remember some time ago when we were talking about, well, I can't even remember the topic, but it was with, Toxic was there, and we were talking about how men and women in certain jobs do differently. And Toxic challenged me on that because, okay, so why am I saying that when it came to my work and kids were aggressive, why would I be better to deal with it than a woman would? And in all fairness, she was right. She asked why, and I didn't have an answer, but it made me think. Now, often when people get a why question and they don't know the answer, it seems that they stopped thinking. Because how dare you challenge my core beliefs? But the very essence of being individuals, the very essence of freedom, is to challenge your core beliefs. And at the very, very, very start of that lies why. So because progressives call you more privileged, you need to change your traditional stories? Yes, it even went as far as the United Nations, Anxious Aussie, where a woman who worked for the UN from, what was it, Jamaica, complained about it. Though children in Jamaica have it far worse than the children in the Netherlands. So there was that little gem. But yes, this is, well, the gollywog in England is pretty upsetting too, to be honest. It is funny to see that so often people are nowadays motivated out of emotion. They don't care about who, what, where, and why. Well, when is interesting, but why is more important than all of those combined, in my humble opinion. So, yes, I know gollywogs were beloved toys to many children. Black children too, by the way. But that's the funny thing. I mean, talking about the St. Nicholas celebration, Suriname used to be a Dutch colony. And they celebrated Saint Nick too. And their Zwarte Piet was always black. Suriname no longer is a colony. They haven't been since the 1980s. But they still celebrate Saint Nick. They don't call it Saint Nick anymore. I've been told they now call it Child's Fest. Fair enough. But they held on to certain traditions. Now the question is, why would you hold on to certain traditions? Yeah, that's an interesting question to have. So look into the why. But people don't look into the why nowadays. People look into the emotion. You're not allowed to dress in a certain way for Halloween because it's cultural appropriation. Why? Why is it cultural appropriation? Well, because we say so. Why is it a bad thing? Because we say so. Who is it offending? Well, us. And we're offended for those people because they don't know that they should be offended. Okay. How incredibly sickening of those people. Why are you talking for someone else? Why can't they talk for themselves? Well, because we think they're not good enough. But they won't answer those questions because they can't say that they think other people aren't good enough, especially the ones that they just claimed to have been victims. This is why, at this point in time, the cancel culture is such a big thing. Everything needs to be cancelled. Well, why is being offended a super bad thing indeed? I don't know, William. I don't care about being offended. It's quite annoying, but in England, well, in English, I should say, the saying is, you don't get offended, you take offense. And who are you to take someone off of someone else? I mean, if someone takes offense with me, I am upset because they took something of me. Of mine, even. I mean, my offense is not yours to take. Entertainment in Western capitalist degeneracy. Opinion of Western capitalist degeneracy. Obey the party is all. Indeed, Paulo Costa. But that's the thing, though. Indoctrination of the youth leads to the indoctrination of the early 20s, leads to the indoctrinations of the 40-year-olds, leads to the indoctrinations of people that came from that. This is why free thinkers are such a problem. This is why they are going to tell you that a gay guy married to a black man is a homophobe and a racist because he was in favor of President Trump. Now, I'm not quite sure what Milo Yiannopoulos did to gain the ire of the West Wing other than being preferably speaking out that Trump would win. But there is something sincerely wrong when your attitudes diminish you from the very get-go. You must be bad because this is what you stand for. This is also why so many left-wing people can be easily goaded because they all have certain feelings that are the same, even though they don't like to admit this, even though they don't understand why. Because they can't ask why. Asking why is offensive. The most well-informed generation is also the least informed generation. When knowledge has no costs, knowledge has no value. I'm not really sure about that one. I do agree with you that our current generation is probably, I won't say least informed, but at least they're very low on understanding. Let me put it like that. And the value of knowledge is still there. Currently we live in a society where knowledge is not so much accepted if it goes against the grain. I mean, it's okay to have knowledge as long as that knowledge is what everyone else wants you to think. It's you're allowed to say whatever I want you to say. That's not free speech. Yes, it is. You are free to say whatever I want you to say. Yeah, but am I not free to say the things you don't want me to say? No. Why? How dare you ask that question, you bigot? I mean, if you're going to tell me that the world is warming, then yeah, no, perfectly fine. Yeah, you can say that. When you're going to say, well, you know, I don't see it happening, and I've been hearing these stories and reading back on these stories for more than 100 years, how dare you prove them wrong? There was a heartening case in the last 2 weeks in the UK. Justice Knowles, in the Harry Miller case, stated there is no right to be offended. They are waking up. Things may be turning for the better. I think you might be right, Renovatio. I really hope so. The thing is, we are currently going through a phase in our society, and this is not the first time we went through this phase. But usually phases like these end up in a clash of cultures. And there's the culture of the individual, where freedom of speech, freedom of thought is very important. And there's the culture of the collectivist, where the idea of group is very important. Unfortunately for the people that like the idea of group, is that the group they align with hardly ever turns out into the group they would like to be part of. This is, for example, why the Red Guards in Mao, China were all pretty much killed. Because after they served their purpose for the revolution, they started asking why. And the revolution couldn't answer why. So they had to be silenced. Now, this is not only true for Mao. This happened in Russia too. This happened under Lenin. That happened under Stalin. This happened under what's his face? Hitler. Hitler had the same thing. Once he got to power, the people closest to him had to follow in lockstep with him. If not, they were expelled. The Australian Parliament voted against why being used in science matters about 2 weeks ago. How can you have science without why? I'm glad that you told me that, Anxious Aussie. I need to look into that one. The ultimate arbiter of science is empirical scientific evidence, being objectively verified hard data as physical measurement and or physical observation, and presented in a logical framework proving cause and effect. This seems all perfectly fine, but if we don't understand the why of a certain aspect of things, we run the risk of conflating causation and correlation, which is kind of what we're doing now. If we look at the whole CO2 story, the CO2 hype, it's all correlation, and the worst part is it's not even well documented correlation. The truth of the matter is that even in the examples they are giving, they're wrong. But why is it that certain graphs they will only show you from 1960 onward? Why is it that they don't like to talk about the medieval warm period? But you're not supposed to ask the why question, because then you're no longer a believer. It is a form of doctrine. In this, John is right. It is authoritarian. Well, it is true that popular opinion, etc., cannot be evidence. Just like anecdotes cannot be evidence. And progressives are more dangerous. I would say they are. I would say that progressives are the ultimate fundamentalists. They pretend not to be, though, but... And indeed, William, the heart can be very deceiving. Sometimes we need to learn to choose between our heart and our mind, between emotion and ratio, cognitive thought. This is something people can learn, but before they can learn that, they need to understand why. Why is it important that I shouldn't eat something that I really like always? Well, because it might not be good for you to eat too much of it. Why not? I enjoy it. Funny enough, look at the obesity epidemic we are having. There is not all of it, but there is part of that is based in the following. Not in the asking why, but just doing. Now, I do find it an interesting topic, and I went all over the place too fast, which is a shame, really, because that causes me to repeat myself. The important message I think I should try to convey here is the idea of why is so important that people stopped caring about it. No, most people will not blink twice. I think this and that. Why? Well, there is blah 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 blah. Oh, but then there's also blah blah blah. Now wait a second. Why didn't we start with why? Why don't we get answers to why before we start talking about all these other things? Because we now live in a society where fast thinking, fast talking, trying to get one over the other one is actually preferred. If you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit. And at the same time, people tend to be reluctant to admit that if someone asks why and they don't know the answer, to admit that they don't know the answer. What happened to saying, oh, good question? Now let's see, is there anything else that's here? Wait a second, okay. I'm sorry scrolling for this. So, yeah, no, it's all over the same. This is no longer that important. I wanted to do a whole story, and then I started doing everything at once. I am sorry for that. At the other end. So the thing is, do you want your surroundings to understand you? Do you want to understand your surroundings? You need to be able to ask why. And you need to be able to answer why. And if you are not able to answer why, you need to be able to say, oh, wait, that's a good question, I don't know. And this is, funny enough, the biggest problems the progressives have. Because they can't. They cannot answer why. Global warming is a problem. Why? Yeah, because the Earth gets too warm. Okay. Why is the Earth getting too warm? Well, carbon dioxide. Oh? Why? What do you mean why? Well, how is carbon dioxide heating the world? Yeah, but the numbers say it. The scientists say it. Okay. Why has there been periods of time with more carbon that weren't warm? Yeah, but because there is more to it. Okay. Then I get back to my first question. So why is CO2 such an issue? Oh, let me see. Oh, Ludicrous sent me. Ludicrous, that's a very nice meme. Wait a second. I'll share it with kind of not very important for the topic today, but I'll share it anyway. There we go, people. I guess Ludicrous is trying to tell me, stop, let's move on. We've beaten this horse. Anyway, yes. See, I'm getting, how do you call that? Distracted. I'm distracting myself as well, don't get me wrong. I guess I said everything I wanted to say. No, I didn't say everything I wanted to say, but I said everything pretty fast, so... And yes, I'm sorry, I'm not going to share your sad news about Prince Andrew's car crash, Leprechaun. That will have to wait till next month. Back to the topic of why. Why did I wanted to do this? Well, this is a very important topic to me, and I kind of messed it up a little bit by going all over the place right from the start. But I want to ask people... Yes, we're getting in early on the Prince Andrew one. I wanted to basically get people to try and look at themselves and see if we are asking why to some of our things. Do we question why we are doing things? Do we question why things are being done to us? Do we allow people to question us? Because I think therein lies a very important part, because if we look at our society at the moment, you're not allowed to question. This is, funny enough, a huge issue, and democracies like the Netherlands and Great Britain and France, where civilians are so much against their personal politicians because those politicians stopped asking why. They started telling the people what they think. They are not asking the people what they think. And when the people do get asked what they think, sorry, hiccup, then the politicians don't listen to the answer. Because it doesn't follow what they want. And there's a sincere problem with that, because it creates a chasm. I think chasm is a good word. It creates a chasm between the elite and the plebs, but it also creates a chasm between different groups of civilians. Maybe I should use civilian and not plebs. Nothing wrong with the word plebs. We cannot allow our society to continue in our current way. We need to be able to keep asking why. And we need to challenge them when they say, well, but that's sexist, that's homophobic. Why? Well, if you don't understand, I can't explain it to you. No. If your answer is, if you don't understand, you can't explain it to me, then that basically proves that you don't understand. Because if you stand for something and you do not know why, in all intents and purposes, you're standing for nothing. Thank you for the explanation there, Nick. I'll say chasm next time. How about accepting all those labels? Is homophobia illegal? Well, that's a very good question. I don't think it should be. I think violence should be illegal, but not liking someone for whatever reason shouldn't be illegal. I think you should be allowed to say things that you feel are true. And then people can challenge you on what you think is true. And then you can have a discussion based on the why. But at this point in time, you're not allowed to do that, because certain words are so bad, you can't say them. You can't say that you hate the gays. No one knows why you can't say it, but you can't say it. How dare you be against transgenders? But why? Personally, I have no problem with a transgender. I have a problem with the push for gender dysphoria, the transgender ideology that currently is being pushed in society. But I have a why. Why am I against it? Because 40% of them commit suicide. That number is too high. I don't want that to happen. So why do we push children into destructive behavior? Well, because it's progressive. Yeah, but are we letting our children die just so that we can claim we are progressive? Well, you might think that's a silly question, and to some people it probably is. But don't forget that not too long ago, a German Europarliamentarian lost a daughter to the rape and murder from one of the immigrants. And he tried to keep it out of the news. So even losing his own child wasn't enough to try and make this person see that there's a why question to be asked. Or even, why is it progressive? Why is it a progressive that we should allow all sorts of individual diversity groups dominating the discussion? And yes, Renovatio, that's indeed the problem, that these ideological authoritarian groups kind of demand what is and is not allowed to be said. And if you don't agree with them, you're not allowed to run. Funny enough, and I've said this so many times, there are no right-wing parties in Europe. But you can't say that that's the case, because saying that automatically makes you right-wing. Well, that's weird. But all parties that they are claiming are right-wings still uphold left-wing policies. And yes, a real Raven, when you sacrifice your children for an idea, that's the best proof that you're adhering to a religion, to an ideology. I wish it weren't so, but you're very correct, real Raven. And this is the problem we are seeing in the West. Progressive narratives have become fanatical, have become so fundamental and so religious that you're not allowed to go against it. It's unfair, mean, all those funny words. Many current politicians have already been forced by the leftist lobby pressure groups to sign a pledge not to question or discuss any topic they do not want questions in the election run-up. Yes, indeed, Renovatio. Funny enough, this is why Trump won. This is why in the United States Trump became such a big person. And this is what happened in it. Sorry, this is what happened in Italy. And this is why AfD in Germany is growing. And this is why there's a rebellion out in France. For over a year, people. The yellow vests have been going on for over a year. But we hardly hear about it in the news. Well, it gets mentioned once and again. But it's been going for over a year. And yes, they are trying to pull the same thing in Australia and in New Zealand. It's progressivism is the cancer of the West. I'm sorry to say it, but progressivism is the cancer of the West, where a lot of people will say feminism is a cancer, and I totally agree with that. Progressivism is a cancer too, and it seems to be a cancer that is so powerful that it actually can stop the body from going into chemo, which is weird because I can't give you one example of a left regime that actually worked for a long time. And with a long time, I obviously mean more than 50 years. Don't get me wrong, not everything coming from progressives is bad, but it always keeps expanding into the danger zone. Progressivism is a child of feminism, and that is why it is cancer. Eliminate feminism and the other problem will be greatly diminished. You could be correct, John. I'm not sure if you are, but you could be correct. But we almost got enlightened, then someone switched off the lights. And that's the thing. We created a society to be safe. And then we started helping people who were not of that society. And those people didn't fit into our society. But how dare we notice that they didn't fit into our society? What are you? A racist. So we opened the doors to let people from societies that do not want to fit in into our society. And we started making rules to stop people from our society to talk about the people that are now in our society but that are still not of our society. Groups disintegrate top down. The leadership is the first thing that fails, and then everything below it will start to disintegrate. And it'll slowly work its way up the ladder again. But usually it comes with bloodshed. If we look at history, usually it becomes with bloodshed. All I can say is that I hope we are able to stop this. It's funny to see that modern day feminism is at each other's throats as well. So maybe that's a little bit of hope in the distance. Modern day feminism is just an intersectional subset of progressivism along with its other power groups. Yes, Renovatio, but yeah. It's true that people from our outside of society, but why were they brought in? The answer, to answer that question, again, it can be traced to feminism. I'm sorry, John, you could be right. I don't see it right now. I'm not really sure if it's because of feminism. Why are some scared of the why? Change comes from it. Change is scary and exhausting, which means they were conservatives all along. Well, that's the funny thing, though. Conservatives are supposed to conserve that which is good, but that which needs to be changed should be changed. And well, we haven't had conservatives for a long time, and we haven't had progressives for a long time, because now progressives merely means to change, and conservatives doesn't mean to conserve. It's a strange world. Feminism is an elitist striving for power with no principle, and it will resort to any tactic. Thus, anything that undermines the existing order will do. Thus, importing all those people from outside our culture. Well, it could be so. I mean, there are also people who say they imported people because there weren't enough people to do the jobs, and we needed people to pay for the welfare. Funny enough, I don't understand that if you need people to pay for the welfare system, you bring in people who are dependent on the welfare system. But it's quite obvious that our politicians haven't been able to answer the why for at least 30 years, probably even longer. And the funny thing is that a lot of the most extreme points we have seen in history, well, in short history, even since the Second World War. If we look at England, for example, people like Enoch Powell, or in the Netherlands, Jan Maat, who were pretty much against letting in foreigners, they've been proven right, even though they were mocked at the time. And I'm not happy about that. I'm not happy about the fact that they were mocked, and I'm not happy that they were proven right. There's something we keep doing wrong. I'm not really sure about that. I mean, I can't talk for the UK, John, but I know that in the Netherlands, before 2008, we were roughly 2 million hands short. But yeah, no, that feminism causes problems, yes. I agree with you too, by the way, Renovatio. The intersectionality has basically started to shatter their groups as well. There's lots of infighting in feminism now. I mean, how dare you be a trans-excluding radical feminist? Anyway, we've gone so far off the why that I don't even know how to bring it back. And I do hope my little rant on the importance of why lands. And I do seriously hope that you will find it within your life and within your day-to-day business. You will find moments where you too can ask yourself and the people around you, why? I do consider you should do so with caution, because a lot of people don't like it when you ask why, but keep doing it. Not just so that you might learn more from them, but the people around you might learn more from that as well. The thing with being able to ask why is it opens eyes. It's not to say people are right or wrong. It's about people understanding why they think so. And Ludicrous, were you sick, mate? I didn't know that. Anyway, and indeed, John, people don't like it when you ask why when they don't know. So when you keep asking why and they don't know why, then all of a sudden you might open some eyes, and some people might say, "Oh, that's maybe a good question." Now, don't get me wrong, I'm an optimist, so I could see the world a lot nicer than it actually is. But at the same time, I think this is what we need to do. This is what we need to try to do. We need to try to create a society where certain questions should be asked. And we should ask people. This is the great thing, for example, when you had that action, what was it, 2 years ago? It's okay to be white. I actually talked with a colleague at my work about it, and she was like, "Oh, that's racist." So, okay, so why is it racist? Well, it's negative, okay. But is it okay to be black? Yeah, sure, it's okay to be black. Oh, you should always be aware of simplistic answers and analyses. That's because people will say certain things, but they don't know why they say them. But you can't get to the bottom of why they're simplistic unless you're willing to ask the questions. Now, a lot of people, when you ask the questions, will not appreciate you asking the question. That is an issue. Yeah, no, you can't say China is not wrong because most people don't care about China. You meant me then. I'm curious how you meant me, John. I have no idea what that is. Happy Oinmor and Soipa Doirachta. Thank you, but I have no idea. It still freaks people out when you put up a fly. I think in New Zealand they actually had a vote in how do you call it, Parliament. And if I heard it right, I can't recall the story right because I'm tired. But they actually voted saying that it's not okay to be white. I'm not really sure I see it as a solution. I see it as a first step, definitely, but it's not the end of the story. I think asking why is not a simplistic solution. I think it's a necessary step. He's a man of simple tastes. Well, yeah, that too. But I do think it's important that we as a society keep asking ourselves why. And allow ourselves to be asked why. And you just know that if you're asking someone why and they don't want to answer, you just know they're not a fair player. And therein lies, I guess, our challenge for the coming years. Because I really fear that it's important to try and find a way to drive off the night, so to speak. Because if we look at what's happening in America with Antifa and the way what Antifa is doing in America, especially in Portland, what Antifa is doing there, and if we compare that to what the precursor of Antifa did in Italy, it's scary, because if we can't talk about this, it's just what John F. Kennedy said. If you make peaceful revolution impossible, you will end up with a bloody revolution. Paraphrasing, obviously, but still. And yes, Australia's parliament. Thank you. And it is amazed that we can still call certain things black, blah blah blah, or white, blah blah blah. The identity politics is growing in size, but the resistance against it is also growing in size. No, I understand that all my examples are from authoritarianism, but not. The problem is people tend to slide into an authoritarian role without realizing. That's the problem with herd mentality. So you want to wane people off of that herd mentality, you have to ask questions. If you can't do that, then yeah, things will take their course, as they have done so often. So we have a White Monday. I didn't know that. Yes, Paolo. It's kind of funny because I started calling Antifa Bolshevik, and they're not Bolshevik because they're not Russian. And I'm like, my God, how dumb are you? No, the focus is not on authoritarianism because most people don't recognize themselves as authoritarian. Even people that are clearly deeply in the authoritarian spectrum don't always recognize themselves as authoritarian. You should be amazed how many people think they are doing it because it's for their own good. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and good intentions really are the problem. Let's be honest, one of the reasons people start talking about how children shouldn't be insulted anymore is because it's painful for children. Yeah, but by insulting these children, you teach them how to deal with it. They grow stronger because of it. Now, because we don't do it anymore and we're stopping it, we're infantilizing children. But those children grow up in infantilized adults, which is a problem. Yeah, but people shouldn't insult. That's not the point. The question is not whether people should or shouldn't do something. The question is, should people be able to deal with it? I need to check your thinking. What's that? I need to go, but I just don't know why. Well, Nick, I hope to see you next time, mate. And how many of you know the origin of Black Friday? I don't. I thought it was called Black Friday because people started killing each other to get better appliances. But I'm not sure why they call it Black Friday. I think it has something to do with the tax year, doesn't it? Will not I? I will not, you mean? I don't know. Anyway, people, because my rambling has been all over the place, but I do like to emphasize the importance of why. And feel free to ask why to me as well. Other than that, I think I'm going to call it quits. Hope you enjoyed it. Anxious Aussie, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, we're going to do the Rune stream. Would be fun. I think I should be able to work with paint to make things visible. Do you want to do it on my channel, on this channel, or do you want to do it on your channel? I am more than curious on what you want. I sometimes ask why. Yes, you do, and I usually have an answer too. Not always. Well, whatever it was, it lowers the prices now, so it must be good. Yeah, no. In all fairness, if a company can lower the prices so much for just a few days, then it should absolutely prove to you that the rest of the time they're overpricing. Because there isn't a company out there that would sell the shirt off their back and wants to survive. Selling the shirt off your back is usually something you do as a last-ditch effort. will.i.am is from, what's that band? Andre 2000 is one of them too, isn't he? I can't remember. Anyway. I agree, Real Raven. People should be able to ask different prices from different prices. Well, I would like to thank you all for joining me. I hope to see you all coming Saturday. I'll try to have a little more structured way of doing things then. I hope. I should. And I'd like to thank you all for joining in. I hope to see you all next time. And anxious, I hope to see you at least once before the Saturday after next Saturday. And for now, I like to go to bed. Are you encouraging sexual promiscuity? I'm not sure how I am encouraging sexual promiscuity. I can clip a short version and link to SOT stream. Might get a couple more subs over here. That would be very nice, Anxious. Thank you. I'm seriously curious. How am I encouraging sexual promiscuity? You have to explain that one to me, John. And I really should end this one. Well, bad joke. I'll leave it at that. Thank you all for coming. This is when I'm going to end the stream. And I hope to see you all next time.